What's up, everybody? Thralls Metal here once again. I'm Necrotic Nick.
I'm Jammin, John.
And we have yet another album review for you. So today we are going to go over the latest offering from Hinayana, Shatter and Fall. This also comes out on the 10th of November on Napalm Records. This band formed in 2014 in Austin, Texas, which, believe me, when you listen to this, you won't even think about America.
Nope.
You will think about Finland, Sweden, the UK, because this doesn't sound like something that comes out of the US very often. This is a very European style of music, and it's kind of cool that there's a little bit of variety in the Texas death metal scene, because this band definitely stands out. Now, this is their second full-length overall. I became a fan with their Death of the Cosmic EP, which I really enjoyed, and I actually brought them up in the Texas States of Metal. And as I said, this is melodic death doom, and we're going to be drawing a lot of comparisons to, I don't know, a lot of peaceful bands for damn sure, like Catatonia, Paradise Lost, My Dying Bride, but also bands like Dark Tranquillity, Insomnium, and I would even say like October Tide a little bit. It's very much in that, you know, death doom sound where it is more focused on melody and being melancholy and sad. Like, this sounds like it was entirely written on like the rainiest of days in Texas. So I don't know how much it rains in Austin, but most of Texas is pretty dry.
A gloomy, cloudy Texas morning.
Yeah, that didn't shit a tornado on them, so you got lucky.
Record is mastered by Dan Swano, so right then and there you should get an inkling as to the sound of this band.
I mean, they got like the right guy for this sound
100%.
in particular.
Yep. Warm, yet kind of crunchy guitars, really smooth bass that just kind of chills in the background. Drums are a little compressed, but it works. It works. It cuts through when it needs to, especially during like syncopated parts and such. Great vocals. The guy has a really commanding low roar.
Yeah, very just, you know, out front. He enunciates really well, and I like that. On this entire thing, there are no clean vocals, and that is generally something I like in, you know, more of the mellow death stuff, where the melody is being supplied by the music itself, and the vocals are just, you know, strong. They're powerful, and, you know, regardless of them being heavy all the time, they still convey all the sad emotion that is going into here. But it's not entirely sad. Like, going into this, you know, I kind of just had the EP to go by, and that EP is a very dreary, more mid-paced offering, and with the first few tracks in here, you definitely get that. But as the album goes on, you hear some more proggy flourishes come up. There are blast beats, there's some heavier syncopated chugs that almost kind of border on gent at times, like not quite, but you know, a little close.
I can see where you might be able to draw that comparison. I think they just decided to go from the more straightforward approach, because I think predominantly this record is very straightforward as far as grooves and whatnot are concerned. But I can see where you might be able to draw that. They break it up a little bit.
Yeah, and again, that kind of comes towards the back half. Like the first three tracks, Slowly, Light Collides, Mind is a Shadow, and How Many Dreams. Well, I think they're all relatively different. They're all very much paying, I would say, homage to, you know, the bands that heavily influenced them. Like, you know, blindfolded, like Pepsi Challenge thing, you might think that some of these songs were, you know, like an Insomnium track or a Paradise Lost track or something like that. Especially like How Many Dreams. How Many Dreams kind of gets to that kind of goth rockish almost vibe. Like, it feels like a single on here. Like, it's not as oppressively heavy, but it is definitely sad, because that is the big vibe on here. Like, this is just pure melodic bummer music.
Although the second verse of that song, on How Many Dreams at least, does get some lower registered chugs in it. It does get a little syncopated, so it gets a little bit heavier.
And this does get like pretty damn heavy in sections, especially on Spirit and Matter, Reverse the Code. Both these songs have blast beats. It's like really heavy tremolos on there, like fierce double bass work, and that definitely kind of showcases their more aggressive side. But honestly, one of the things that stood out to me is a lot of the clean playing. There's a lot of moments of acoustic melody. The opening track, Slowly, Light Collides. Spirit and Matter actually has some really good sections.
How Many Dreams.
How Many Dreams. Triptych Visions. There's really pretty acoustic melodies, and This band has a formula, but it's a pretty tried and true one because, I mean, you know, look at all the bands we already listed.
Yeah, right.
You have a good, solid backbone riff. Like, it's generally kind of syncopated, but it's also very melodic. Like, it's not just bottom-heavy chugs all the time. But on top of that, you have, like, really lush lead playing. It's, you know, not always super heavy. Sometimes it's very clean, very... ethereal, I guess is sort of a word for it, and the interplay with the synths, because synths are also very prominent on here too. And you get a lot of these just big, open, just kind of like waves of gray. Like it's not black, it's certainly not white. It is just raining and dreary across this entire album, but it's also very pretty at times.
Well, but then again, some of the melodies too are rather triumphant. In Mind is a Shadow, that triumphant lead. In Lost to the Flame, a big triumphant background melody.
Yeah, and the solos on here, while they are kind of short for the most part, most of the time you get like lead melodies, which is, you know, kind of more of a standard thing in melodic death metal. Like you just have some, you know, really good catchy hook to lay on top of that already catchy riff. But occasionally you have some like really good standout solos like Lost the Flame and Triptych Visions. There's a little bit more nuance and a little bit more to the phrasing. Like it's not necessarily just following the riff and, you know, following the synth pattern to give it another big melodic harmony. There's some really good shredding on there, but it's generally very condensed. You know, I think the one on Lost the Flame hangs out a little bit longer.
Yeah.
But overall, they're short, they're sweet, and they are there to supply more melody on top of an already like good melodic hook.
Yeah. The one on Triptych Visions hangs out a little bit too. All the leads actually are very tastefully done. They're pretty short, but leads appear on I'd say about 80% of this record.
I also like the fact that, you know, most of the time doom and melodic death doom and death doom in general, generally it kind of hangs out at a very slow to mid-tempo pace. And while that is like a good chunk of this, I like the fact that there are some really invigorating blast beat sections and just some like flat out heavy moments on here that are a little bit more dynamic, a little bit more urgent. Like Reverse the Code, it opens up with what I would call like a solid rock riff. Like it's just a good rocking riff right away. It's got a good hook to it. That curtails into like flat out machine gun riffing. It gets a little bit thrashy, and sections on this song, while they have their big triumphant choruses and, you know, like the big melodic hooks, there are some more sinister, more downtrodden riffs that aren't necessarily sad, but, you know, maybe just a little bit darker.
And they're a little bit more akin to, say, death metal. The Answer does that too. The Answer actually starts off with what we both thought to be like a earlier kind of Opeth vibe, like something out of Blackwater Park, maybe Ghost Reveries, but it definitely had that, and then big chugs and a lot of different grooves. Again, one of the heavier songs, Triptych Visions, was the same thing with its triplet chugs and whatnot.
Yeah, the drum work on here I think is, you know, low-key, like, kind of dynamic. Like, there's a lot of good tempo shifts. The transitions are all very smooth, too. There's some clever fills here and there. But a lot of it is just sticking to the groove and just kind of staying in that pocket and occasionally getting outside of it just to add, like, a proggy flourish.
He does incorporate a lot of cymbal work, too. Like, I noticed there's quite a bit of hi-hat work, and there's some cool accents with the China cymbal every now and again. So it's not necessarily, like, off-time by any means. But, again, it's a little bit of flavor.
A lot of I would still say melody comes first, like before going for like, you know, the super heavy moments. But the heavy moments are still on there, and again, they're done with, you know, a little bit of variety. Like I liked A Tide Unturning, which actually features Tuomas Sakuinen. I'm sorry if I fucked up your name. He is the main guy behind bands like Before the Dawn and namely Wolfheart, because Wolfheart's absolutely killer. And kind of fitting because this band definitely sounds like they're from Finland. But this song is a little bit slower, you know, it's a little bit kind of doomier. Like the riffs on it scream more doom metal than death metal at times, and it's just got a really good kind of dark, heavy vibe, but also, again, big soaring leads and choruses. I kind of like that whole constant roller coaster that's on here, like where we're down the dumps, we're completely bummed out, I don't even want to go outside today. Oh, look, a rainbow.
It does have some catchy hooks, too, especially that song. Earworms, that just immediately, that melody that they have with the groove, it just immediately gets stuck in your head, and they repeat it enough to allow you to catch on.
And baseline, I would say this entire album, every song on here has a solid melodic hook. Like, melody is always at the forefront, and they're always really good about like interweaving like the synths, the guitars, and for the most part, it really works. But at the same time, there's some stuff on here that I feel is, well, I mean, a little bit stock for the style. And unfortunately, it kind of starts at like the beginning of the album.
Yeah, the first like 3 songs, 3.5 songs even, are very by the numbers.
Yeah, like very much wearing their influences on their sleeve. And I mean, granted, they are good influences, but the songs just were a little bit dull, especially in comparison to the later songs, which they really seem to like just open up the playbook a little bit more. Like Mind is a Shadow. I like it. It has some good like melodeath tropes to it, but overall it kind of sounds like a Catatonia B-side from like the earlier years when they were still doing harsher vocals. And How Many Dreams, I mean, it feels, again, kind of just stock for that style. Like, it's not necessarily a bad song, but I feel like I've heard this song done several times over by a variety of different bands that probably influenced this band. And this does have like a brief interlude from Our Darkest Moments. It's pretty. It's, again, showcasing the awesome acoustic melodies that are on here, but it doesn't feel very necessary because it doesn't really, transition into the next track, Reverse the Code, which is an absolute banger on here. It doesn't work as setup.
Right, and it doesn't really showcase anything different than what's already being presented in the songs either, because a lot of the songs are full of acoustic melody, full of beautiful, lush synths. The only thing missing in the interlude would be the drums, but I mean, you're still not necessarily adding anything by doing that because of what's already being presented on the record anyway.
Yeah, it's kind of like, a brief pit stop. And I like A Tide Unturning, but my issue is Tomas sounds so much like their vocalist. It's kind of hard to pick up the vocal changes. Like Jake Jones from Ether Realm does backup vocals on Mind is a Shadow, and you can tell his because he does like some more blackened shrieks. And those moments on there are like, oh, okay, that really stands out. It sounds colder. It sounds a little bit more sinister. On A Tide Unturning, it just feels like another one of their songs. And granted, I think it's really good. I just feel like, when you have a guest like that, you want to give them a chance to really shine. It just kind of blends together there.
And then the last track, Taken, which we guess is a recording from their original demo. I actually really like that track, to be honest, because it uses the guitars more for the melodies than it does the synths. Like, it's pretty much voided of synths. It sounds a little bit darker, and by nature, I guess, a little bit heavier because of how much darker it is and because it's voided of the lush atmosphere created by the synths.
Yeah, the guitars just feel way more prominent, and I mean, synths aren't necessarily a huge problem here, but I do feel that there are a couple of tracks in here where they are just maybe a tad overbearing, like Spirit and Matter. It almost gets a little symphonic. You got like layered lush synths and then like a piano sound. It just gets to be too much, and this album, I think, is really mixed well and mastered well, so everything has room to breathe, but that was probably one of the few moments here where it just kind of felt a little bit cluttered. I
thought the Lost to the Flame, too, maybe turn down that melody a little bit because you had such a rock and groove going there, and then to make it all like, ooh.
Yeah, the riffs on that song are just like a little bit different. Like, there's even like some kind of thrashier moments on there just in terms of like the riff work. But overall, honestly, I like this. I mean, this is very much in my wheelhouse. I like sad boy, melodic death doom. I've been listening to that shit for years, and I think this is really well done. So overall, I'm going to give this 3.5 stars. I like the vibe of it. They stay, again, dreary and melancholy, but man, like the melodies in here are really catchy. There's a lot of really good lead play that is, granted, like kind of like subtle and not really overdone, but I think the songwriting is really good. They definitely, emulate their heroes. And I'm glad that all their heroes, in terms of like all the bands that they have probably listened to and have influenced them, have been really good bands, because they're definitely like showcasing like the best parts of them. The vocals stay nice and heavy throughout. There's excellent riffs. There's a good variety more towards the back half. I just wish this didn't get off to such a slow start. It almost killed the momentum, but as the album went on, I was like, okay, I feel like some of these songs should have been up a little bit sooner just to kind of break the monotony. But overall, if you like bands like Paradise Lost, Catatonia, My Dying Bride, Mother of Graves, that's a U.S. band that doesn't sound like they're from the U.S. too. Dark Tranquility, Ghost Brigade, like there's a ton of them. Like if you just like sad, melodic, but heavy music, check this band out.
I'm going to give this 3 stars. While I like the overall flow of the record, I might have stuck different songs in different places because it did get a little, I don't know, it was stagnant from the beginning. And then it got better as time went on. Anyway, I like all the melodies. I like the cool riffs, although I found it to be a bit more melodic than riffy. Again, that's me. It is very straightforward. They're not reinventing the wheel here by any means, but it does jam, especially since it seems to be a little bit on the sleeves of, again, Insomnia in Paradise Lost, Catatonia, some early Opeth, majority of any of the bands that we've mentioned here. It's definitely more sad than it is evil. I found it to be a little bit more mellow death at times than I would say doom, but who cares? They did a good job. Like, it's a very good presentation. This band is obviously very talented. The vocals, I think that constant just like deep growl over everything kept it from being overly triumphant and bright at any point. Like, it definitely is sad and gray. Something great to come out of Texas that doesn't sound like every other band in fucking Texas. Don't get me wrong. I adore the Texas death metal scene. But it is very good for what it is. I just found it to be a little bit like the constant background melody for me. While it is very pretty, like, I just would have toned it down in places and tweaked it a little bit. Nonetheless, it's a pretty good record. I would definitely recommend checking it out.
So, if you enjoyed this review, give it a thumbs up, and if you are new to the channel, subscribe, because we do stuff like this all the time. We are also on Patreon. If you'd like to help us out there, there's a link down below to thrallsmetal.com. Our Patreon link is there. It is also on our channel, but thrallsmetal.com is where you go to find Thralls Metal stuff. We have new shirts, we have old shirts at a discounted price, and we have hats. So if you are interested in any of those things, click the link down below.
And of course, here at Thralls of Metal, we always have stuff going on. There is a ton of content coming. Of course, we're approaching in the end of the year, so we got to make our end of year lists, which isn't as fun as it sounds, because this year has been jam-packed with tons and tons and tons of killer fucking music. It's going to be really difficult to get a top 40, because I wanted to give you a top 50.
Yeah, there's a good chance your favorite album won't be on our list,
right,
just because we didn't have room.
But nonetheless, thank you guys for continuing to tune in and check us out and listening to what we have to say, although that's kind of odd because we're fucking idiots. I'm glad you're here. You could do worse, but we're glad you don't. Thank you for showing up and becoming friends and family here with Thralls of Metal, Nick.
Pretty much what he said, and I'm going to thank you one more time because that's what I do, and we will catch you later.